My dear friends, I'm stepping it up slightly because I want to do some more pencil drawing, but the previous pencil drawings you saw me do, I was doing in this little sketchbook here, which is very nice. Some of them I did, I don't know why I'm flipping through it this way, but there's a lot of random stuff in here I did over the years. Some of these are decades old, but I did these recent pencil sketches in here, right? Just kind of a warm up to get back into drawing. Yeah, drawing with pencil, I mean. But now, I don't have them here. They're in the car. I've got some nice 16 by 20 frames, a couple of them, and this 16 by 20 paper to go in the frames. And now I just need to do some 16 by 20 drawings on the paper to go in the frames, to go on the wall. So hopefully I don't get in my brain about it, right? It was all nice and peachy when I was just scribbling away in the sketchbook, not a care in the world, but now I'm telling myself, right? I hope I'm not like jinxing my own brain by telling myself it's a nice piece of paper, right? 140-pound, hot pressed, acid free, 100% cotton watercolor paper that's gonna go in a nice frame that costs me money, right? I front loaded it with all these expectations. Hopefully I can still just relax and let the creative juices flow in a way that I enjoy. Because I've run into this problem before, and that's one reason why I like sketchbooks so much, because it's just like, just do it. It's a sketchbook, it's in the name, just sketch, just have fun. And I usually end up putting a lot of time and effort into them, and they don't look like sketches, but still okay, let's see what happens. This is the biggest Ziploc bag ever, by the way. Oh yeah, that is a nice piece of paper. Smells papery. I'm gonna be using these colored pencils. Not colored pencils. Well, colored as long as the only color you want is grayscale. They could smell woodier. I think there's too much plastic involved for me to truly get the experience out of this that I want. But there's a nice range here. What I'm really fascinated by is that I don't know if it's focusing very well, but look, the hardest pencil here is a 2H, and the softest one is a 9B. Usually when you buy a range of pencils like this, the 2H and the F are usually somewhere near the middle of the range. So maybe this is a collection that's focusing more on the softer, darker tones, which is interesting. See how it goes. Maybe I don't need anything harder than the 2H. Okay, at this point in the segment, I'm going to hit you with some quick book reviews. Just tell you what I'm thinking, what I think of some of the books I've been reading recently. And I've been going through a different phase of book reading than I was a while ago, because for a little while I was going through a phase where I was only reading nonfiction books, and why I was doing that is a whole other thing I can get into, which I think I've talked about a little bit. I was reading only like books about philosophy and science, like evolution and history, like where civilization came from and where it's going to and stuff like that. Anyways, I've pivoted. All right. Nowadays, I'm reading just nonfiction books, and just kind of trying to find the books that entertain me the most. And maybe as I hit you with a few of these book reviews, you'll see a trend and see what kind of genres I prefer. I'm gonna try to clump them together by genre a little bit. The first ones this first one is the one the ones I've just started reading most recently, uh, this author, Vernor Vinge, he wrote 2 books. This second one I'm in the middle of reading right now. The first one is called A Fire Upon the Deep, and the second one is called A Deepness in the Sky. I'm in the middle of reading A Deepness in the Sky right now. These are both science fiction books. I think A Fire in the Deep, Upon the Deep was written in like 1994 or something like that. But I was impressed. I think this is what you might call hard science fiction, which is, I suggested that I might leave it up to you to figure out which genre I like the best. But I think this is the genre I like the best. Science fiction with some attention to realism and detail, right? And in these books by Vernor Vinge, there's like, I don't know, I like the thought experiments about what does happen when humanity or other species adventure across the stars, and like how do they adventure throughout space, and what happens when they meet other species, and what kind of impacts are there upon life, and how, there's like a million different ways to look at it and issues to address. And there's some interesting things here, things like what happens when one person lives for like 1,000 or 2,000 years because they spend thousands of years in what, there's a common concept here, cold sleep or cryo sleep. The person could be, 80 years old practically, but they spent like thousands of years asleep. A lot of things can change in that person's life that wouldn't normally change in it. Anyways, so just like a lot of little things like that, interacting with other alien species, and, does the author choose to write from the perspective of the alien species at all? And what is that like? How creative is the author in that? And I think that Vernor Vinge, these 2 books I've read from him so far, I like these a lot. I would recommend them. And I think he did really good with like how he explains technology and stuff, even though he was writing in like the mid 1990s. I thought I was really impressed. It didn't seem dated to me at all. There's another one I read called A Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert A. Heinlein. That's a popular science fiction author. That was a pretty good book. It was about a guy. I mean, there might be some slight spoilers in some of my reviews, by the way. I'm sorry if there are, but I don't think I'm not going to tell you how any of the books end. But try not to say anything that wouldn't be in the blurb on the back of a book. But this is about a human, I think, that gets raised on Mars. So he essentially becomes a Martian, and he comes back to Earth, and he has like brain powers, like psionic powers, and he can do all these things like read minds, control people, see the future, stuff like that. So there's a interesting thing there, like maybe examining the difference between human and alien. And I thought that was a pretty good book. I'd give it, if I was going to give the first 2 by Vernor Vinge a 5 out of 5, like for me, it doesn't take a lot to get a 5 out of 5. I just have to enjoy reading it. I'd probably give A Stranger in a Strange Land a 4 or a 4.5 out of 5. Next up, we got 2001, A Space Odyssey. This is a very popular movie and in my opinion, a very confusing movie. This is going to happen with a few of these books that I mention. I don't remember a lot from this book. I remember the beginning, and if you've watched the movie, there's a whole section at the beginning where there's like apes, and the apes find these big smooth obelisks. That happens in this book too. That's really the main part I remember, and I was hoping, it could have been, I think I read this, I don't think it was a year ago, but I still don't remember what happened. It didn't leave a big impression on me, like some books that I've read even longer ago. I think that's a bad sign. I think I'm going to give it like a 2.5 out of 5, if that, just because it didn't stick with me. It didn't seem like a poorly written book, but it didn't impact me at all, almost.
So I don't really have a lot more to say about it. If you want to read it, it's not a really long book or anything. I only read it because it seemed like such a classic. You know, they made a classic movie out of it, so on and so forth. I think it probably explores some cool ideas because I think those obelisks that the apes were interacting with were like, that was some other highly advanced civilization trying to help them or impact them or watching them somehow, which I think is an interesting concept. And then another similar, that's kind of this. That's those. I feel like those books that I just mentioned are all kind of in the same category because they're kind of older sci-fi books. Now here's one. This is probably my favorite sci-fi book of all time. The Three Body Problem series by Cixin Liu. This is, I think I mentioned this before. I think this series is also called The Remembrance of Earth's Past. And they've made I think this is made by a Chinese author. And the technological stuff in this is very well written. I think the author is a computer engineer or programmer or some sort of electrical engineer or something. So he does, like, the technological aspects are written very well, because I think that's one of the things that bothers me a lot of the time when it's like, I don't know, I spend so much time on the computer, it bugs me when someone can't even accurately explain how someone uses a computer. Just like when you watch a movie and someone's hacking and they're like, I'm into the mainframe, I'm doing a back trace, and when people are on the computers and they only type and they never use the mouse or click on anything, and it's just annoying. But I don't know. Anyways, these are great books. The Three Body Problem, there's a version on, it's been made into a couple of TV shows by now, most recently on Netflix. I watched the Netflix version. It was pretty good. Obviously, it wasn't as epic and amazing as the books, but I thought I enjoyed it. And yeah, these books, I just love the scale of them. The thought experiments of what happens between humans and space and other species. And I don't want to say too much because you could do crazy spoilers with these. I don't want to say anything, but I like these books a lot. I will say I got like halfway through the first book and stopped for like 6 months to a year before I kept going and finished it, and I'm glad I kept going because it had a slow start, I'll admit. All right, and the next series I want to talk about is the Hyperion series by Dan Simmons. It goes Hyperion, The Fall of Hyperion, Endymion, The Rise of Endymion. If you don't know what I'm talking about, these probably won't mean anything to you, but if you just look up the Hyperion series, these are pretty good sci-fi books. I like them a lot. It's kind of a weird mix of sci-fi and almost sci-fi things getting advanced all the way so much to the point it starts to become fantasy. Like, I mean, that is, when, isn't there some saying about indiscernible magic being indiscernible from sufficiently advanced technology or something like that? But these are really good books. I mean, it's a good sign if I read 4 of them, right? And I think I liked, once again, the scale of them, which is one thing I didn't like about this next book, Ascension by Nicholas Binge. This one had cool ideas also, mostly with time, I think. Had weird time things going on. I don't want to say more than that to ruin it, but one thing I didn't like about it is it took place almost entirely in one location, one setting. And I just thought it could have, so much more could have happened. Ascension kind of, by the name Ascension and even the picture on the front of the book, it happens on a mountain. The whole book takes place on one mountain. And I'm just like, I don't know. It's just, I wanted more. Okay. It's just, I don't know. You know what I mean? And then let me move on to some fantasy books I read. There's this one called House of Earth and Blood. I think there's a Crescent City series. These were okay. My friend who's into more of this kind of book told me about these. It's kind of a mix between sci-fi and fantasy. These books have a ton of weird things that are hard to digest, that they just throw them at you all at the same time, like a bunch of weird species, like fairies, werewolves, angels, demons, and they just kind of throw you into this. This book is by Sarah J. Maas. Maas? I don't know how to say her last name, but they throw you into this world, and it takes you a while to kind of get the hang of it. A lot of weird words for the different species that even by the end, I wasn't sure what some of the words meant. Yeah, and a lot of like teasing about a sex scene that never happened, stuff like that. Moving on to this book called Fourth Wing and a sequel called Iron Flame. This is kind of like a grown-up version of Hogwarts, a grown-up version of Harry Potter, where the students do actually regularly die, get terribly wounded, they have sex with each other, and they all have dragons. I don't know how many people had dragons in Harry Potter. I don't really remember. But these books were okay. I think I liked the first one better than the second one, but they were decent. I don't know. These ones are, I think this is called the Empyrean series, Fourth Wing and Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. Once again, recommended to me by a friend of mine who likes fantasy books a little more than I do. Yeah, but in this one, they like, the kids like, they go to like a school for learning to ride dragons, just like Hogwarts, and then they, at some point, they also get, once they get bonded with a dragon, they also get like a little power. Like they, some of them get to, I don't want to spoil it, but it's kind of like a little magic-y thing. They get powers. So yeah. And then I also read this book that's literally called Fairy Tale by Stephen King. And I didn't finish this book because like the first half of it, this might be some spoilers right here because I don't know. I don't want to spoil it, but look, Fairy Tale, like the first half of it, they're like hinting at this other world that this guy is trying to find out about, right? And trying to get into. And then once he finally gets into this other fairy tale world, I don't know, I wasn't as interested anymore. It's kind of like if you're watching like a sitcom or something, in the sitcoms, they're always like hinting at like this like relationship between the two leading people, like Jim and Pam in The Office or something, and then when they finally get together, it's like, oh, this is boring now. It's like, yeah, when he finally got to the fairy tale world, I like wasn't interested in anymore. All the mystery was gone. And then here's another category of books. Two books by Truman Capote. Truman Capote. I read Breakfast at Tiffany's, which I don't really remember at all. It's a short book. I remember the movie, which I watched years ago, more than the book, which I only read like a year ago. Very short. Don't remember it at all. That's a bad sign. I just realized I forgot I was supposed to be rating these with numbers. I'd give that one like a 1.5 out of 5 just because it was so forgettable. But this other book by Truman Capote, am I saying his name wrong or right? His other book, maybe, I think this might have been his first one, called In Cold Blood. It was like, I don't know if this is supposed to be, I think this is supposed to be like a true crime novel. But then some people were like, is this really true? You could have made this all up. You don't have any proof. That was a pretty good book. I liked that one. That one stuck with me. It's about like this, I think this guy, maybe a detective, maybe like what today would be like maybe some guy trying to make a true crime podcast or something, going around and trying to figure out this murder or a couple of murders or following these murderers around. And it was pretty good. And then I read this book called No Country for Old Men. Great movie. I had to rewatch it the other day when someone mentioned that it doesn't have a soundtrack at all. Like there's no background music at all for any of the movie. I rewatched it and it was even more powerful. Anyways, and then I read the book and I was amazed, even more amazed by the movie, because the book, I would say like maybe 75 or 80, maybe 90% of the book is almost scene for scene identical to the movie. Like the book and the movie are extremely similar, maybe more than any book and movie pairing I've ever seen. Yeah. I would also say The Martian, and those two books and movies have a lot of very close to identical scenes, except The Martian movie left out a lot of scenes that are in the book. But the scenes that are in the movie are almost identical to the ones in the book, from what I can remember. And then there are some, like, these are what I call like airport nonfiction books that you'd like if you're like bored and you want to find a nonfiction book in the airport bookstore. These are the ones you find there. Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. This is also recently a Netflix show. Pretty good show. Pretty good book. It was like, I don't know. It was just like a story. It had some twists. It had a twist or two. Nothing mind-blowing, but it was good enough. I could kind of see where it was going. But it was like, okay. I'll give it like a 3.5 out of 5. Like I wouldn't tell you not to read it, but if you're bored, you could read it. And then another one called Remarkably Bright Creatures, by Shelby Van Pelt. This one was cool because you got to hear the inner thoughts of a octopus. I think this one was also like a 3.5 out of 5. I don't know. It's just like, okay, interesting. It's just like a story about an octopus and a guy who worked at an aquarium. That was it. I don't know what else to say. You know, I think all the science fiction stories I've really fallen in love with that have incredible scope and crazy things that happen with, I don't know, I get like spoiled by the crazy things that can happen in those, that when it's just like a regular story. Like, I mean, I still have good memories of reading, you know, like in high school, reading Hatchet or something. Like that's still like a good book, a good story. I'm not trying to put down a regular story of a regular human narrative, right? Just a person and what happens to them. But yeah. Anyways, there you go. If you have any recommendations, let me know of things to read, because I will say almost every single one of these, if not every single one, was an audiobook I listened to. I didn't read any of these with my eyeballs. These are all audiobooks I listen to while I draw or while I edit videos or while I'm walking. So I can go through books pretty quick. Yeah. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Like that House of Earth and Blood one, the Crescent City book, that was a 37-hour audiobook. Oh, that one, the annoying thing about that one was that it didn't seem like it needed to be a fantasy book. Almost everything that happened in it, and it really didn't need to be that long. It could have been about 40% shorter, and still everything could have happened. It seemed like it could have been like it could have been a present day book, like a set in present day New York or something, or San Francisco, or like 1960s like detective noir sort of thing. There's no reason for it to have been overcomplicated by adding strange, demonic, and alien, and fae, and mermaid species that just made it harder to keep track of everything, right? That was my main complaint about it, I think. Too long and too overcomplicated by strange species for the narrative. Like, the narrative didn't really hinge on any of the strange species. It was just kind of for fun, I guess, but it wasn't that fun. Anyways, all right, goodbye. I don't know how long I've been talking about this. Oh, just 20 minutes. Oh, great. Okay, great. All right. I'll put the list of books that I mentioned in the description if you want to look any of them up. Okay, goodbye.
Okay, I'm about to put this thing in the frame. Put a little signature on it here. I don't often sign my drawings, but if I'm going to be putting it in the frame, I Might as well. Looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. It's one of those things where I could keep going on it forever, but I gotta stop at some point. I like where it's at right now. There we go. The lighting is not very good in here. And I think it's still a little bit crooked, but you get the idea. Now I can sit at my desk, and it's there behind me. Trying to get a angle of it where the light isn't glaring. Yeah, pretty dimly lit room I work in, except for the desk spot, because there's only one light bulb left in my ceiling light. But anyways, I'm holding my phone up now to try to... What I'm trying to say is it's not the most flattering place that I've hung it, okay? It looks... It's a good drawing, it's just not well presented. Okay, do you believe me? I hope you believe me. It's amazing. It's a masterpiece. It's a work of art. Okay, it's amazing. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you all have a good day. Take care. Pretty happy with what I've accomplished. Okay, goodbye.